As pollsters are currently trying to assess the will of the American people in one of the most consequential elections of my lifetime, I thought to learn a little bit about how U.S. federal elections are administered. And I wanted to share with you what I found, and that's what I'm covering today on the Root of All Evil podcast. Joe can't be with us today. He's traveling to Japan. Big konnichiwa to Joe, wherever he is. First, the states decide how to administer the election. The Constitution, as it was originally written, fit 4 of these pages, and these 4 pages defined our system of government. On the first page, in Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, our Constitution states that, quote, the time, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Over the years, I'll read the highlighted bit here, the Supreme Court has interpreted the election cause expansively, enabling states to provide a complete code for congressional elections, not only as to times and places, but in relation to notices, registration, supervision of voting, protection of voters, prevention of fraud and corrupt practices, counting of votes, duties of inspectors and canvassers, and making and publication of election returns. So, states administer the election, but there is a carve-out here in case Congress passes a law that can apply to all states. Let's take a quick look at some of those. The federal laws which were passed on this front revolved mostly around fighting discrimination, mostly on the basis of race. A few others to note. Framed in red are 2 which provided access to voting for military voters and voters living outside of the United States. I'll spare you my reading of the whole title of the act. The frame in blue is the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. As it says here, quote, it created new ways to register to vote. It also called for states to keep more accurate voter registration lists. In green, we have the Help America Vote Act of 2002, which created the Election Assistance Commission. Here in purple, it created minimum standards for states to follow in several key areas of election administration, such as, looking down here, provision voting, voting information, updating voter equipment, voter registration databases, voter ID procedures, and administrative complaint procedures. The point of all this is to show that while the states have the authority to administer the election, there are some aspects, like don't discriminate based on race, that are applied at the federal level, and that all states must comply with. I'll add that there are a few threads here that I was really tempted to pull on, mainly the voter ID procedures, but that might have to wait for another episode. All this said, the state still has considerable amount of discretion when administering an election. This discretion in practice is best seen along a spectrum. One side, there's election integrity, and on the other, I'll call it turnout. To illustrate the range of views here, let's compare 2 organizations that have applied scorecards to the states for, quote, democracy ratings and, quote, election integrity. The scorecard on the left is generated by the Movement Advancement Project, or MAP, a left-leaning organization. The scorecard summary on the right is generated by the Heritage Foundation, a right-leaning organization. You'll see that high-scoring states on the left, like California and Washington, are the lowest scoring on the right, and vice versa. This is each organization's attempt to pull political bodies towards their desired end of the spectrum at work. To simplify, the left seems driven by adopting policies that increase the amount of people that vote, the turnout, and the right seems driven by adopting policies that increase election integrity and security. Now, just as a disclaimer, I'm aware that these 2 are not perfect apples-to-apples comparison. The map on the left has an election security component, but I think these graphics still capture the point I'm trying to make, which is that there are conflicting value tiers. Do you maximize security or do you maximize turnout? Now let's look at some of the specific considerations and see how each organization views the decision. Voting by mail. The left-leaning organization scorecard will punish states which require a witness signature to return absentee ballots. The right will award points. Ballot drop box policies and availability. The left-leaning scorecard applauds the use of drop boxes. The right does not. Voter ID. The left-leaning organization punishes the photo ID requirement. The right-leaning organization rewards the requirement. Now, in Pennsylvania, there will no doubt be a lot of ayes. According to each of the scorecard, they stand roughly in the same patch. I wanted to include this slide as it also provides a detailed list of the methodology, certainly for the right-leaning organization, the Heritage Foundation, and different components of what they consider to be crucial for election integrity. Now, through my research, the next thing that I wanted to look at was how election fraud might be committed. So let me share with you quickly with what I found. This report is from the Government Accountability Institute, which is not to be confused with the Government Accountability Office, which is a government organization, or it's also not to be confused with another institute by the exact same name. So this is a .org, so take that as you like. And in my perusal of their site, I found them to be somewhat less nuanced than I would like. Now that said, for the purposes of this slide, they provide a complete list of potential sources of risks for election integrity. I'm not suggesting that there is widespread systemic fraud that would materially impact the election, but a reasonable person would conclude that the amount of fraud isn't zero. It is some number higher than zero. And the ultimate question, however, is if there could be enough fraud to swing an entire election. And even more diabolical, if that fraud was orchestrated by a single body to swing it. I don't know. But we're going to take a close look at a few of these in future episodes. Now, as a teaser, the one we are interested in as of right now, kind of in discussions, is number 46, irregular voting spikes. Now, what does that look like? The threads left for us to pull are why something like this would happen. And is it reasonable? We'll pull that thread in a later episode. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.